Good morning. I know I said yesterday was the last video of the year, but this one is unscheduled as something has indeed came up. There's a chap calling himself Alex Cairney, going on Facebook posting disturbing videos from an area of Glasgow called Govanhill. You'd have to be blind or deaf not to have heard about it this week. I've been watching this story and didn't want to blog on it until I formed a view one way or the other. In these videos, Mr Cairney makes many allegations, very serious in nature, and despite claiming not to care about the politics, he goes to great pains to remind us that it is in Nicola Sturgeon's constituency. Further, he attributes most of the issues in the area to the local Roma or Romanian community. Now, this has been seized upon by unionists as a failure of the SNP government and the First Minister in particular, as the local MSP. It's been trending second on UK Twitter and was even mentioned by Douglas Ross in his Facebook live chat on Tuesday night. But we should all exercise extreme caution in believing all of what he posts. And even if all his allegations were true, we should all remain aware there are much more UK government policies at play here than Scottish government ones. The allegations Mr Cairney makes include drug dealing and use, child exploitation, a culture of domestic and sexual violence, gang culture, serious and illegal overcrowding of private rented accommodation, and finally fly tipping. All of this stuff is very serious, and if it is happening, it deserves the toughest of action. No one is pretending that the area doesn't have issues, but many people have gone online and in the press to say that Mr Cairney is exaggerating the issues in Govanhill. This week, Police Scotland investigated his claims and found no evidence to support them. Govanhill is indeed, as Mr Cairney says, in Nicola Sturgeon's own constituency. She has been the MSP there since 2007. She was preceded by the Labour Party's Gordon Jackson from 1999 to 2007. The local authority is Glasgow City Council, which has been under SNP control for 2 years and for the preceding 38 years was under Labour Party control. The Roma community were allowed to move into the UK under the immigration policies of a previous Labour-led UK government. That government failed to cap immigration from the new EU nations in 2004, when most of the former Eastern Bloc countries made the conditions for EU entry. A mechanism did exist to cap said immigration, but the UK government failed to take advantage of it. The UK government right to buy scheme, promoted under a previous Tory-led government, gave a lot of people their first foot on the property ladder by allowing them to buy their council houses with a discount, depending on the length of their tenancy. But the local authority housing that was sold was never replaced, and the houses were soon mostly in the hands of private landlords. The Scottish Government has banned right to buy in Scotland, but the damage has already been done. The local authority in Govanhill is now trying to take out long-term leases on these homes so that they can be sublet by the council to tenants and the council can take back control of the closes. But the landlords have proven to be unwilling to sell. The Scottish Government have repeatedly asked for drugs policy to be devolved to Scotland, as the UK dictated policy isn't working here. It's also worth saying in a week that some pretty grim figures on drug deaths were revealed, that Scotland records all deaths involving drugs as drugs deaths. Drug-induced suicides, drug-induced road accidents, prescription drug overdoses, prescription drug misuse, to name but a few, are recorded as drugs deaths in Scotland. While in our UK, only deaths directly caused by illegal drugs are recorded as such. Mr Cairney raises some very important issues, and his videos clearly reveal an issue with sanitation and drug use in the area. But his videos reveal no evidence whatsoever of chronic overcrowding of private rented accommodation. Now, unfortunately, as the tenements are now almost all privately owned, the local authority is no longer able to service the common areas. This means that a lot of the closes and back courts that Mr Cairney visits and films are no longer under local authority control, where in the past maintenance of these common areas would have been council-led, occupancy could have been monitored and rogue landlords kept out of business. So, until the mess actually spills out into the streets, it isn't a failure of the local authority. Expecting the council to clean up the closes and back courts of private property would be like me expecting Aberdeenshire Council to keep my garden tidy for me. The needle debris could be widely swept up proactively if the Scottish Government were permitted to make safe drug consumption rooms available. Unfortunately, our hands are tied, as drug policy is a UK reserved matter. His videos reveal no evidence whatsoever of child exploitation, domestic and sexual violence, or a pervasive gang culture. Mr Cairney often says that he has things on good authority and he has spoken to people, but he doesn't want to put them on camera. But no one who works for the NHS and values their career would breach patient confidentiality, not even the receptionist. So I find his reports on good authority from local paramedics and the local doctor's surgery very, very hard to believe. And while he claims not to have a political agenda, he does seem to single out the First Minister as the local MSP for Govanhill for criticism. Now, this is despite the fact that until 2 years ago, the local authority was Labour-run for 38 years, and that the immigration issue, the right to buy policy and the drugs policies are all UK government reserved matters. Miss Sturgeon is indeed the constituency MSP. The area patrolled by Mr Cairney is a small part of our constituency. As First Minister, she has a responsibility most of us can't fathom and could probably never carry. If she were a more normal MSP in a more normal time, then I'm sure much more of her time could be devoted to constituency matters. But she's currently leading the country through the dual disasters of the COVID-19 pandemic and Brexit, often against the intransigence of the UK government. So she's quite busy. And when an MSP has extra responsibilities, like a ministerial post, it can take them away from their constituency work. Senior ministers are often less hands-on with their constituencies, and they don't get more senior than Nicola. This is, of course, not just limited to the First Minister or the SNP. Just ask the constituents of Edinburgh Central, represented by Baroness Ruth Davidson of the Conservatives, who has time in her busy schedule to host a radio phone-in show, but hasn't held a single constituency surgery since she was elected in 2016. The fact that this area is in the First Minister's constituency is actually quite irrelevant to the whole story. The problems have been building up there for a long, long time, and there are more UK government policies at play than Scottish government ones. Added to which, being the First Minister's constituency doesn't entitle the area to any special consideration. From looking at Mr Cairney's videos, there's no doubt about the sanitation issue, but the discarded needles issue could have been mitigated proactively with the Scottish Government proposal of safe drug consumption rooms in high-risk areas. This would also give the authorities a better chance to engage with active drug users, provide needle exchange and reduce other drug-associated health issues, and ultimately get people into programmes. This proposal was, of course, vetoed by Westminster and further talked down even this week by the Prime Minister himself. Citizen journalism, blogging or vlogging, etc., has its place. Let's face it, I'm one of them. But Mr Cairney gives me pause. He goes to great pains to tell us all how filthy the place is and how dangerous it is, and to be there alone in the dark, all while he is there alone in the dark. And despite it being, according to him, really, really dangerous, and despite many offers of company from his Facebook followers, he always goes to great pains to say how much he really doesn't want anybody to join him on these nightly strolls in case they get hurt. If I was somewhere as dangerous as that, I'd want company. I'd want fucking lots of company. Interestingly, a journalist from the Herald saw Mr Cairney shooting one of his videos as she walked home to Govanhill, alone at night, as she does every night, and she didn't feel scared at all. As much as we would all hope that it wasn't the case, I'm sure that sadly, in a city the size of Glasgow, there will be some child exploitation going on. We'd be naive if we thought that wasn't the case, and we need to stamp it out. I'm not calling Mr Cairney a liar, but at this stage I'm also not willing to fully accept his claims without actual evidence of the wider issues beyond sanitation and drug use. Particularly as he seems very keen to keep us all at arm's length so that he can be the one to report on all this concerning but unverified stuff. To me, that smacks of control freakery. And if his version of the truth is incontrovertible, why would he not want it verified by a third party? Because in his say-so, it's hearsay. And as any good lawyer will tell you, hearsay is not evidence. The issues that Mr Cairney presents are most serious, and if they do actually exist in the scale he reports, then the attention he draws to them is warranted. If he gets the action needed, then kudos to him, more power to his elbow. But without actual evidence, I'm very reluctant to believe him, and I'm truly surprised at just how many people have accepted it as the truth, and that poses a real problem. I'll reveal why with two people I know who'll remain anonymous. Mate number one is one of my closest friends. One of the first of my friends I saw sharing this stuff. I had seen it before he shared it, but I was unconvinced. Despite mate number one not knowing Mr Cairney, not knowing his motivations, not knowing his state of mind, and watching the same video as I did, he was totally willing to accept Mr Cairney's videos and the truth. Despite knowing me for over 25 years, trusting me, well, I hope he does anyway, and knowing I'm of sound mind, when I challenged Mr Cairney's assertions, it was like I was being an unreasonable one, despite the fact that I wasn't flat out calling Mr Cairney a liar. I just wanted to question his assertions. Mate 2 is a former colleague who I stay in touch with online. He was less passionate but perhaps more concerned. He sent me the video. When I challenged its legitimacy, he said that he didn't know enough to argue and bid me good day. And that's fair enough. But at that stage, he'd already shared it on his Facebook page. And to me, this was potentially more dangerous than mate number one, who felt so passionately about it. Because this guy was willing to accept it easily and share it casually, giving Mr Cairney exposure that may not be warranted. Twitter is a microblogging network. Censorship isn't in their interest, but truth is. Twitter stopped Mr Cairney trending, not because they wanted to censor him, but because his allegations, just like Donald Trump's electoral fraud allegations, couldn't be verified. Even in the small chance that Mr Cairney is correct, then he and his followers should perhaps look a little further afield for the cause of the problem. There are more UK government policies, current and historic, contributing to this issue than ScotGov ones, and these issues need fixing too. And while I don't doubt that the First Minister and the Scottish Government need to get stuck into the drugs problem in Govanhill, we can't expect that to be any success if we go into it hamstrung by continued UK government inflexibility. In summary, and quite simply, I don't know Mr Cairney, but the chances are neither do you. I was as shocked as you all are by the videos that he posted, but I just didn't blindly accept it, so I decided to look objectively, and I'm glad I did. He could be telling the truth, but I'm not convinced, and it's him and his control freakery I'm not convinced by. Because the most obvious problem with Mr Cairney's videos is that beyond the sanitation and the discarded needle issues, which do deserve swift action, if we are all being totally honest and objective, all these videos actually show is a bloke having a stroll at night and having a one-sided chat into his phone. DaviePHD.